na vidhiparaha. That abhava is there in saharodit, and as much as this arthavada vakya, by supplementing a vidhi vakya, becomes karyaparam. So the hetu, the siddha, sadhya, the na karyaparatvam is absent, and hetu, niyojya vidhuratvam is present. That is condition for vibhichara. So if you just said niyojya vidhuratvat, if that was the only hetu, then saharodit vakya would have vibhichara in that anumana. Iti, on account of that, visheshana dalam, therefore this hetu, namely nirojya vidhuratvat, has been further qualified swarte phalavatve sati. So swarte phalavatva rupa hetu abhavat. Saharodit does not have swarte phalavatvam. It does not have meaning, result of its own. It becomes meaningful only by supplementing a vidhivakya. So swarte hetu not being there, swarte phalavatvam not being there, saharodit doesn't come in the category, doesn't get included in this anumanam. Therefore, na vivichara. Second vakya, jyotishtomena swargakamo yajeta. Jyotishtom vakya visheshana dalasya hetuho satvat. Had it only been said, Vedantaha navidiparaha swarte phalavatvat. Suppose that was said, then also this jyotishtomena swargakamo yajeta would also become Vedanta. Or because it is swarte phalavatvam is there, but then na vidhiparatvam is also there, na vidhiparatvam is not there, then there would have been a vivichara there. So says jyotishtom vakya visheshana dalasya hetuho satvat swarte phalavatvam. That jyotishtom vakya has swarte phala. Itself it conveys a meaning and it is useful. Karyabodhakatvena sadhya bhavasya satvacha. But this karyabodhakam vakyam, so vidhiparam vakyam, so na vidhiparaha, that sadhya abhava is there. So sadhya abhavavati hetuho sattvam. Sadhya is not there and hetu is there. This is called vivichara. Sattvacha vivichara. Then vivichara would have happened if you had said Vedanta na vidhiparaha swarte phalavatvat. Therefore, tad varanaya vishesha dalam. So therefore it said niyojya vidhuratvat. Vishesha is niyojya vidhuratva, visheshana is swarte phalavatvam. Videya bodhakatvena vishishta hetu abhavat na vivichara iti bhavaha. Since videya bodhakatvam is there, jyotishtoma is videya, and therefore so that videya bodhakam, so niyojya vidhuratvam is not there, and therefore this vakya also does not get included here. In short, it is said that saharodit, which is arthavada, does not have swarte phalavatvam, therefore it is vidhiparam, and swargakama yajeta has swarte phalavatvam, but niyojya vidhuratvam is there, therefore also it is vidhiparam, and therefore those vakyas are not included in this particular anumanam, meaning this anumanam is tight. This anumanam doesn't have any vibhichara, doesn't have any exceptions, or it cannot be, it doesn't have any loopholes, that's all. Siddhanta iti atra iti. Now Bhashyakara says. Now the first vakya. Atra abhidhiyate. Atra abhidhiyate. Here, when this Purva-paksha comes, then this is what we have to say. Atra is seventh case. So when this condition arises, iti Purva-pakshe prapte sati. When this Purva-paksha occurs, abhidhiyate, then this is what has to be said. This is what we have to say. What are we going to say? Ratnaprabha says, Yaduktam moksha kamasya niyojyasya jnanam vidheyamiti. Moksha kamaha or amrutatva kamaha brahma vidyaya moksham bhavaye or brahma bhavaye. So brahma upasita, amrutatva kamaha brahma upasita. One who is desirous of immortality, may he meditate upon Brahma. That is not the spirit of Vedanta. Yat uktam, that's how you want to interpret that vakya. Moksha kamasya niyojyasya. Moksha kama is desirous of moksha. His niyojya meaning he is the one who has the freedom to do something. Niyojyasya jnanam vidheyam. That is knowledge or upasana. Jnanam here means meditation. Jnanam or meditation is enjoined for the one who is desirous of moksha. This is what you have said. Tanna, that is not so. Iti. And says Bhashyakara therefore, na karma brahma vidya phalayoho vailakshanya atra vidiyate. This is what we have to say, na. So if you don't have a reference to the earlier one, what is this na? What does it relate to? This is what we have to say. Then he says no. So this is with reference to what you have said, this is what we have to say. What? No. That should have been enough. But you can't just make a statement and keep quiet. So you have to explain your statement. What is the hetu? Why do you say no? What's wrong with that? Karma brahma vidya phalayoho vailakshanyat. So this is what we have. Since you, in what you say, this is the reason. We say no, you are not right, or your interpretation is not right, because there is a vailakshanyam. In between what? Karma and brahma vidya phalam. Karma phala and brahma vidya phalayoho vailakshanyat. That karma phalam is of one kind, brahma vidya phalam is of a different kind. These phalas being totally different from each other. Therefore, the rule that is applicable to karma phala is not applicable to brahma vidya phala, and therefore your conclusion or contention is not right. That vailakshanyam you must show. Even by making statement is not enough. You must then show what is the vailakshanyam, or what is the difference between karma phala and brahma vidya phala, which Bhashyakara will proceed to show. So this is how ideas are to be developed. You first make a position no, then he knows what to expect from you. Otherwise, if you say no at the end, then he thinks that you are agreeing with him. Sometimes what happens is, when people bring the proposition, then we keep saying a lot of things, and he thinks that he agrees with me. At the end, we say no. But then right away you make yourself clear that no, I don't agree. Why? Because of this. How do you say that? Then you explain. So make a statement, give the reason, and explain the reason. That is a way to communicate. Otherwise, you first start explaining, and then give reason, and then give conclusion. Then this fellow, if he is intelligent, is fine, but very often people are not. Then they just do not understand you at all. For a long time, for the whole life, husband and wife do not understand each other very often, because explanations are there, but proper reasons are not given and ideas are not clarified. So, no, I don't know. That means you think that he doesn't like it, But that's not the thing. Even though he says, I don't want, he wants, you have to find out that. And that is how, because you have to find out what the reasoning is involved. Or, when you express your opinion, make yourself clear. If you don't make yourself clear, people will misunderstand you for the whole of your life, and you feel that injustice, all kinds of conclusions you will have within yourself. That is because very often there is a lack of communication. In India, there is lack of communication. People keep things inside all the time, never express it for whatever reason. And therefore, you always have to guess, and you always have to wonder what is what. And then you yourself imagine something and do it. It works out well and good, sometimes backfires, and So only for the effect, the causes and things like that, because the things are never explicitly made clear. So, karma brahma vidya phalayoho vailakshanyat. Because a vailakshanam, total difference between karma phalam and brahma vidya phalam. So, niyojyasya, meaning moksha kamasya, jnanam means brahma. There you should add one word, jnanam, meaning brahma jnanam. Niyojya in case of Vedanta, according to Purvapakshi, is moksha kama. And jnanam is brahma jnanam, which should actually mean upasana. Okay. Then when you give, now anumanam is implied by Bhashyakara, when he gives hetu. What is the sadhya there? Na means what? Na vidhiparaha. That's sadhya. What's the hetu? Karma, brahma, vidya, phalayoho, vailakshanyat. Because there is a vailakshanyam or a total distinction between karma phala and brahma vidya phala. So what anumana is involved there is clarified by Ratna Prabhakara. Moksha na vidhijanyah. He himself already said it, but he says again, Moksha na vidhijanyah. Karma phala vilakshanatvat atmodityartha. He has presented anumanam which has so many aspects, and of which one anumanam is given here. Moksha na vidhijanyah. Moksha is not created from vidhi. They say that vidhi will create apurva. when you implement the karma, it will create apurva, or some subtle result which will bring about the effect. He says in Brahma Jnana does not create any apurva. Otherwise, if by knowledge of Brahman something is created, then vidhi is required. But it does not create, it just reveals. So, moksha na vidhijanya. Moksha is not is result of vidhi or created by vidhi. Karma phala vilakshanatvat. Karma phalam is that which is always the product of vidhi and anushtanam, and that's not the case with moksha. Atma dityartha, like Atma. Atma is not to be created by some vidhi that may you be there. You know, it's not necessary to say may you be there, may you exist. Is it necessary to say that? Is it that I exist because someone said may you exist? Or is it that I exist because I think I exist? No, I exist regardless. Meaning my existence is not dependent upon anybody's instruction or my way of thinking. If I stop thinking in a certain way, then a given thing will not happen. That's what will happen in karma. If you don't do a given thing in a given way, then a certain result will not come. Is it that the existence of myself is dependent upon what I do or what I don't do or the way I think? No. It is independent. Atmavat. How do you say that you are? Because I think I am. How do you say that you are? Because Shastra says that I am. No. That kind of vidhi is not required. Existence is not born of a vidhi. Existence is not born of a thought pattern. Existence is not born of meditation. I meditated upon myself this morning, therefore I am. You can meditate only when you are. And somebody can address you when you are in the first place. And therefore, Atmavat means like existence, like Atma. Is not a product of vidhi, is not a product of karma, is not something that is created. And so also, moksha is also something that is not created, something which is an existing fact. That I am free. Am I free because I know I am free? No. Even if you think that you are not free, you are still free. If you are being free dependent upon a given way of thinking, then upasana is required. But your being free is not dependent upon a way of thinking. Your being bound is dependent upon a way of thinking. Your being free is not dependent upon a way of thinking. Understand this. Since my being bound is dependent upon a way of thinking, therefore a proper way of thinking is required to eliminate that bondage. But my being free is not dependent upon a way of thinking, and therefore, once knowledge takes place, there is no need for you to keep meditating that I am free, because you are free without any reason. Being free does not depend upon anything. Being bound depends upon something. It depends upon what? Adhyasa. Therefore, adhyasa must be eliminated in order to eliminate bondage. But being free does not depend upon anything. Therefore, nothing need to be done to be free or to remain free. That's why jnana karma samuccaya is not required. Once the knowledge takes place, you need not do anything to remain free because you are free without doing something. That's the nature. For being natural, no karma is required. For remaining unnatural, karma is required. For walking on the legs, no karma or effort is required. For walking on the head, something is required. It's unnatural. For water to be cold, no effort is required. For water to remain hot, effort is required. So once the water becomes cold, what should you do to keep it cold? Nothing. Don't heat it. In this case, nothing is to be done. So what should you do having gained the mukti? Nothing. Because that is the nature. But bondage is something that is born of a way of thinking. For being happy, nothing to be done. But for being unhappy, something is to be done. What? A given way of thinking is responsible or required to be miserable or to be sad. But nothing is to be done to remain happy. But since we keep doing something all the time and thus creating sadness, therefore it looks as though that happiness is not there. Therefore they say stop doing things. That's why what is samadhi? When the yogis ask us to do samadhi, means what? Stop doing anything. Because we know that, whether they know it or not, it is experience, that when you do something, then alone you can be sad. A given way of thinking makes you sad. But what happens is we give one way of thinking, adopt another way of thinking which makes me sad again in a different way. I gave up that way of thinking. When I was unmarried, then I was thinking in one way and therefore I was sad. So I got married. I started thinking in a different way. Then sadness in a different way. Then I thought, okay, let me have a child. I started thinking in a third way, yet sadness in a third way. Since we keep on thinking in a certain way, that sadness is continuous. When you don't think, as in deep sleep, you are not sad. But in every moment of waking and dream, thinking goes on, and therefore sadness is generated. We don't even know that. We are constantly generating sadness by way of thinking. It is like Shruti is there all the time. But once the sadness has gone away by correcting the way of thinking, what should you do to remain happy? Nothing. Although that is not our experience right now, today I must do something to be happy, and I seem to be sad without any effort, but that's not so. Understand that effort is constantly being made now in terms of the wrong way of seeing or wrong way of thinking. Built-in effort is there, and therefore built-in sadness is there. And on those moments, when that effort of wrong thinking is not there, there is a release when we experience happiness. So we experience happiness at a moment when that effort of wrong thinking is given up. This is Vedanta. And therefore, for happiness, no effort is required. For sadness, effort is required. But I don't make any effort to be sad. But you do. How? Enough is to think. That's all. You need not do anything externally. Thinking in a given... What's the thinking? Aham karta, aham bhokta, aham samsari. That thinking is going on without effort. I'm a man, manusyoham. That's enough to make me sad. Because I'm manusya, therefore I'm mortal. That's all. Moment I say manusyoham, I am a man or a human being, meaning I am mortal. That's why sadness. Manusyoham, therefore I am ignorant. Sadness. Manusyoham, therefore I am samsari. Sadness. What else do you need to think? Not that you must have 1500 thoughts to become one is enough, That basic thought, manusyoham, kartaham, bhoktaham. Understand that thinking is going on. That conclusion always that's enough to make me sad. And what all we think is only built up of this thinking. You build up on this manusya. I am tall, I am short, I am lean, I am fat, I am father, I am son. Therefore, you decorate this like icing the cake, So this fundamental manusyoham is further developed by us because we are artists, And therefore, the sadness gains different kinds of modes, it seems. But how, therefore, the sadness is there because of a given way of thinking which is there. To remain free, no effort is required. So if you stop even thinking I am sad, then you cannot be bound. Or I am jiva, I am samsari, I am manusya. That adhyasa is naisargikoyam loka vyavahara. That's why it was necessary to think about it. This naisargik, understand that without your doing something you are still doing, because that has become habitual. To think about myself and the world in a certain way has become so habitual that I don't even know that I am doing it. When a given thing becomes habit, I don't know that I am doing. You keep doing like this, I don't even know that I am doing it. People tell me, Swami, kya karte hain aap? I am doing nothing, but you are. Naisargikoyam vyavahara. Similarly, to proclaim idam aham idam mama idam iti, vyavahara is what? Shabda prayoga. I proclaim, I am this, I am manusya, aham karta, aham bhokta, aham manusya. This is mine, this is my body, my book, my this, my that. Naisargika. Therefore, we just take it for granted. And therefore even psychology takes all this for granted because this is there. To penetrate this is Vedanta, you see. So we, without our effort, naturally meaning habitually, not naturally, habitually, this fundamental adhyasa, wrong thinking has been taking place, and that is the cause for sadness. So we have to strike there. You keep on striking everywhere else, keeping the ultimate thing intact, original cause intact. That's what we do in our life, that's called samsara. That thinking that I am unmarried makes me sad, alright, let me get married, okay. Now that I am married, but there are only two of us, that still makes me sad because the boredom does not go, let us have a third one. Now that there are three, therefore we are congested, let us have a bigger place and therefore a bigger house. Now that the house is big, therefore also we are far away because in vicinity you cannot get a house and therefore you must have a vehicle. Now that I have a vehicle, and it goes on, builds up. So samsara builds up like this, which is all right, I mean, there is nothing wrong in this. This is something to be known. Each one of these can be also a source of happiness. It is not that this has to be create sadness. Is wrong thinking that creates sadness, not wife or children or house or car. Vedanta doesn't say Jagat is or Karanam, cause for sadness. Where is it said? Nowhere is it said. If it is said only in Arthavada, it may be said. That's all. Just to turn your attention off from something. Jagat sumitya hai, sab aisa hai, sab swas ke sage, things like that, They keep saying this. Artham, anartham, bhava, nityam, etc. All Arthavada. Artha mein kuch anartha nahi hai. Where is anartha? If anartha is here, then artha can become anartha. If here anartha is not there, artha becomes arthavat. And therefore, moksha na vidijanya. Moksha means freedom, or is not vidijanya. Is not created by vidhi or effort. Karma phala vilakshanatvad. Because it is different from karma. It's not a karma phala. Samsara is karma phala. Or is not vidhi phala, but is what? Is karma phala meaning is born out of karma. Karma in the terms of this adhyasa, which is a pattern of thinking. Atmavad ityartha, as we said, Atma is I'm there not because of something. I'm there because I'm there. That's all. Why are you there? What can I do about it? That's my nature. So why are you doing this? That you can ask, because some will is involved. But sometimes parents say, why did you come here? Who asked you to be born? Sometimes parents get so upset, So what can I do about it? If you tell me why am I not doing given thing, then I can do, or why am I doing something, I can give it up. But how can I eliminate, how can I erase the fact of existence? Atmavad ityartha. So this is the Pratyeka Atmavad ityartha. Now explain by Purnanandiya. Na, put a stop there, a comma there. Na. Karma Brahma Vidya Phalayo Vailakshanyadi Shri Bhashyakarasya Vastu Sangrahaka Vakyam etada. This is the whole Vastu is given. Hetu is completely given. Karma Brahma Vidya Phalayo Vailakshanyad. Na is Sadhya. Na gives you what? Sadhya. What? Vedantaha na vidhiparaha. Karma Brahma Vidya Phalayo Vailakshanyad gives you the Hetu. So Anumanam is given. This is the Vastu Sangrahaka Vakyam. The whole idea that is to be presented is contained, in this expression, Na Karma Brahma Vidya Phalayo Vailakshanyat. Tassaiva Prapanchaha. That very Vakya is going to be further expounded. Ataha na kartavya sheshatvena brahma upadesho yuktaha iti antam bhashyam on page 153. So from page 145 to page 153, Bhashyakara is going to explain this karma brahma vidya phalayo vailakshanyam is going to be explained by Bhashyakara in all these statements. Even there also, tatra varnitam samsaram anuvadati iti antam bhashyam, page 149, which says tatra varnitam samsaram anuvadati. Up to that, iti antam bhashyam karma tatphala pratibadakam. So Bhashya up to that explains what is the nature of karma and what's the nature of karma phala. Brahmopadesho yuktaha, up to page 153 tantam bhashyam tu tad vailakshanya pratibadakam. From that point to up to that point in 153 page, that section explains the vailakshanyam of karma phala and brahma vidya phala. So up to page 149 it explains the nature of karma phala. And up to that, from that point to page 153 is explained vailakshanyam, or the difference that is there between karma phala and brahma vidya phala. Iti pradhano upasarjana bhavena vibhagam abhipretya. Pradhan is the main, upasarjana is the secondary, gauna. So this vibhaga is there, abhipretya bhashyam avatarayati. Pradhana is what? The whole vakya is explained from shariram up to that point in 153, and then the secondary vibhaga are this, that this one section explains the nature of karma phala, other section explains the vailakshanyam between karma phala and brahma vidya. And keeping all of this in mind, Ratnaprabha says here, so says Ratnaprabha, Ukta hetu jnanaya karma tatphale prapanchayati. Ukta hetu jnanaya. What is the hetu? Karma brahma vidya phalayo vailakshanya. That hetu is there, which has been stated. Jnanaya, in order to explain that hetu, understand, karma tatphale prapanchayati. First, the exposition or explanation of karma and the karma phala. First Bhashyakara says. Up to that page 149. Then karma phala Vaiklakshan will be said up to the Vakya up to page 153. Shariram ityadina varnitam samsarupam anuvadati iti antena. So we'll just read that whole section, okay? Says Bhashyakara. Shariram vachikam manasam cha karma shruti smriti siddham dharmakhyam yad vishaya jignasa athato dharma jignasa iti sutrita adharmopi हिंसादिहि प्रतिषेध चोदना लक्षणत्वा जिज्ञास्य परिहाराय तयोः चोदना लक्षणयोः अर्थानर्थयोः धर्माधर्मयोः फले प्रत्यक्षे सुख दुखे शरीर वांग मनोभिरेवोपभुज्यमाने विषयेन्द्रिय संयोग जन्ये ब्रह्मादिषु स्थावरान्तेषु प्रसिद्धे मनुष्यत्वादारभ्य ब्रह्मान्तेषु देहवत्सु सुखतारतम्यम् अनुश्रूयते ततश्च तद्धेतोः धर्मस्य तारतम्यं गम्यते धर्मतारतम्यात् अधिकारितारतम्यं प्रसिद्धं च अर्थित्वसामर्थ्यादिकृतम् अधिकारितारतम्यम् तथा च यागादि अनुष्ठायिनामेव विद्या समाधि विशेषात् उत्तरेण पथा गमनं केवलैः इष्टापूर्तदत्तसाधनैः धूमादिक्रमेण दक्षिणेन पथा गमनं तत्रापि सुखतारतम्यं तत्साधनतारतम्यं च शास्त्रात् यावत् सम्पादमुषित्वा इत्यस्माद् गम्यते तथा मनुष्यादिषु नरकस्थावरान्तेषु सुखलवः चोदनालक्षणधर्मसाध्य एव इति गम्यते तारतम्येन वर्तमानः तथा ऊर्ध्वङ्गतेषु अधोगतेषु च देहवत्सु दुःखतारतम्यदर्शनात् तद्धेतोः अधर्मस्य प्रतिषेधचोदनालक्षणस्य तदनुष्ठायिनां च तारतम्यं गम्यते एवं अविद्यादिदोषवतां धर्माधर्मतारतम्यनिमित्तं शरीरोपादानपूर्वकं सुखदुःखतारतम्यम् अनित्यं संसाररूपं श्रुतिस्मृतिन्यायप्रसिद्धम् तथा च श्रुतिः न वै सशरीरस्य सतः प्रियाप्रिययोः अपहतिरस्ति इति यथा वर्णितं samsara rupam anuvadati. Up to this point is explanation of karma and karma phala. Up to this point is explained karma tat phale prapanchayati. So karma and the phala is explained up to this point. Now continuing. Ashariram va vasantam न प्रिया प्रिये स्पृशतः इति प्रिया प्रिय स्पर्श प्रतिषेधात् चोदना लक्षण धर्म कार्यत्वम् मोक्षाख्यस्य अशरीरत्वस्य प्रतिषिध्यते इति गम्यते धर्म कार्यत्वे हि प्रिया प्रिय स्पर्शन प्रतिषेधः नोपपद्यते अशरीरत्वमेव धर्म कार्यमिति चेत् न तस्य स्वाभाविकत्वात् अशरीरं शरीरेषु अनवस्थेष्वस्थितं महान्तं विभुमात्मानं मत्वा धीरो न शोचति अप्राणो ह्यमना शुभ्रः असंगो ह्ययं पुरुषः इत्यादि श्रुतिभ्यः अतः एव अनुष्ठेय कर्मफल विलक्षणम् मोक्षाख्यम् अशरीरत्वम् नित्यमिति सिद्धम् तत्र किञ्चित् परिणामि नित्यम् यस्मिन् विक्रियमाणेऽपि तदेवमिदमिति बुद्धिर्न विहन्यते यथा पृथिव्यादि जगन्नित्यत्ववादिनां यथा च सांख्यानां गुणाः इदन्तु पारमार्थिकं कूटस्थं नित्यं व्योमवत सर्वव्यापी सर्वविक्रियारहितं नित्यतृप्तं निरवयवं स्वयं ज्योतिस्वभावं यत्र धर्माधर्मौ सहकार्येण कालत्रयञ्च नोपावर्तेते तदेतत् अशरीरत्वं मोक्षाख्यम् अन्यत्र धर्मात् अन्यत्राधर्मात् अन्यत्रास्मात् कृतात् अन्यत्र भूताच्च भव्याच्च इत्यादि श्रुतिभ्यः अतः तद्ब्रह्म यस्येयं जिज्ञासा प्रस्तुता तद्यदि कर्तव्यशेषत्वेन उपदिश्येत तेन च कर्तव्येन साध्यश्चेत् मोक्षोऽभ्युपगम्येत अनित्येव स्यात् तत्रैवं सति यथोक्तकर्मफलेष्वेव तारतम्यावस्थितेषु अनित्येषु कश्चिदतिशयः मोक्ष इति प्रसज्येत नित्यस्य मोक्षः सर्वैः मोक्षवादिभिः अभ्युपगम्यते अतः न कर्तव्यशेषत्वेन ब्रह्मोपदेशो युक्तः. So Bhashya up to this point explains the Vailakshanyam, the distinction between Karma Phala and Brahma Vidya Phalam. So we'll see that too now. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sūtra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Atha Tattu Samanvaya Vidiyate Na Karma Brahma Vidya Phalayor Vailakshanyad Atra Vidiyate Yaduktam Moksha Kamasya Niyojyasya Jnanam Vidhemiti. In that, the Purva Pakshi, you said that in the Vedanta or the Upanishad, Moksha Kamasya, that for the one who is desirous of moksha, he becomes Niyojya. Niyojya is the one who becomes the object of injunction, one who is addressed, one who is asked, one who is enjoined, and necessarily he must be the one who is desirous of something. Therefore, if also Vedanta, the Brahmajnana is enjoined, and that enjoyment is possible only when there is, as you said, freedom. When a person who is enjoined or who is instructed has a freedom to do that thing or not to do it, then alone instruction has a place. Where that freedom is not there, there cannot be instruction or enjoyment. Thus Vedas or no one can actually enjoin a person to do something or not to do something when the person does not have freedom to do or not to do. Thus, I can be enjoined something for which I have the yogyata, for which I have the capability, and I have the desire to do because I have a free will. However, in case of moksha, there is no question of a free will, that I have a desire for moksha or I do not have a desire for moksha. Such choices cannot be. In case of moksha, there cannot be a choice that I do not desire moksha or I can do without moksha. There is no choice. Therefore, that niyojya is not there. Niyojya means a person who is enjoined, and he must necessarily have a free will or a choice. With reference to moksha, there is no choice because it is already my nature. Whether I want it or not, I am already a mumukshu. Everyone is born a mumukshu. Therefore, really there is no choice in doing without moksha. I have a choice in doing without swarga. I have a choice in doing without some other karma phala. And so I may not want it. But there is no choice in doing without moksha or doing with bondage. That is not possible. Secondly, is there a choice in me to do a given thing, to know Brahman in one way or know it in a different way? So kartum, akartum, anyathava kartum shakyam. When it comes to karma, since there is a free will, there is a choice of doing, not doing, or doing in whichever way I like. In case of knowledge, such choice is not there. That to know or know it differently, etc., this choice is not there. An object or a thing must be known as it is. Knowledge of a thing is determined by the thing and not determined by the knower, and therefore free will has no scope there. Where free will doesn't have a scope, there cannot be niyojya, understand. Therefore, in case of Brahmajnanam, in knowledge of Brahman, or in any knowledge for that matter, in any knowledge there cannot be a niyojya. We cannot dictate someone to know a thing in one way or the other way. We can dictate someone to do a thing or not to do. We cannot dictate someone to know a thing in one way or the other because whether the person wants or not, the knowledge will take place true to the thing alone. So whether you want or not, you cannot know this object as an elephant. So may you know this object in my hand as an elephant. If you had a choice to know it as an elephant, then yes. then you could be a niyojya, meaning then you could be dictated. Yes, I can say, may you look upon this object as an elephant. Then there is a choice. May you meditate upon this object in my hand as an elephant. Yes, you have a choice. May you look upon it, but may you know it as an elephant? There is no choice. So understand the difference between knowledge and upasana. In knowledge, there is no choice in as much as knowledge must take place true to the nature of the object, where meditation or upasana or bhavana is something that is dependent upon a person. If you have sufficient imagination, you can look upon this object in my hand as an elephant, saying that, hey, this looks like a trunk, and this looks like the head, and you can see certain features, some similarities in whichever way, and can look upon this as an elephant. Asmin bimbe mahaganapatim avahayami. He takes one little turmeric and makes a small little, turmeric mound he makes. It has nothing to do with Ganapati. It doesn't look like it even. Even then he says, Asmin bimbe mahaganapatim avahayami. You have a choice. Saraswati avahayami. Also you can say, whatever you want to do avahanam of, you can do that. Because in invoking something, looking upon something, maintaining a bhavana, there is always a choice. Therefore, yes, we can enjoin someone to look upon thing or meditate upon a thing. Meditation is looking upon, understand. Meditation here is looking upon a thing in one way. Even looking upon me as Brahman is just looking upon. And so meditation involves what? Looking upon a thing in a certain way. It is my free will. How can you worship this as God? He says, it's my free will. People cannot understand how can Hindus worship stones. We don't worship stones, but we exercise our free will to look upon a stone as God. That free will human being has, that has been employed. That is an excellent thing. Nobody has used that ability that human being has of exercising his free will in looking upon it. Hindus have employed it. So no one is as intelligent and clever as the Vedic religion is. Regardless of that, in knowledge, as we said, there is no free will, no choice. And the niyojya, meaning the one who is enjoined, cannot be with reference to knowledge. And therefore, niyojyasya bhavat, niyojya vidhuratvat. Whether it is Vedanta or any other thing, where knowledge is involved, okay? Whether it is physics or chemistry or whatever it is, any branch of knowledge, when knowledge is involved, there cannot be, you cannot dictate somebody, you cannot control somebody, you cannot direct somebody. There cannot be niyojya. Vedanta being is the book of knowledge, which reveals the thing as it is. Then there is no choice in the knower to know a thing different from what it is. Therefore, there cannot be niyojya. They will say there is a niyojya. Moksha kamasya, amrutatva kamasya. Or amrutatva kamaha, one who is desirous of immortality, may he look upon Atma as Brahman. And therefore, yes, you can become amrutatva kama if you have some imagination about what immortality is. Maybe you can desire immortality as each one of us does. In fact, in immortality also there cannot be a choice, but then we think that we desire immortality. That also is ignorance. Niyojyasya jnanam vidheyam, that knowledge has been enjoined. Knowledge cannot be enjoined. Because, as we said, there is no choice. Enjoyment can be only with reference to choice. So whenever you give instruction to somebody, make sure whether that someone has a choice to do it or not. Then of course there is a capability of doing or not. It will come. Then jnanam vidheyam iti. This is what you said. Tanna. Atra is this. Yaduktam moksha kamasya niyojyasya jnanam vidheyam iti. Abhidhiyate. Then we have to say it. Na iti. What does na mean? Moksha na vidhijanya. Karma phala vilakshanatvat atma dityartha. That moksha na means na karma phala janya. Moksha cannot be born of a karma. Cannot be a karma phala. Why is it so? Na vidhijanya. Meaning it cannot be something that is created as a result of vidhi or as a result of an instruction. Karma phala vilakshanatvat, because it is vilakshana, it is quite different from karma phala. Therefore it was said in Naishkarma Siddhi also, Had moksha been of the nature of utpatti, apti, vikriti, samskriti, then moksha could be enjoyed. Because utpatti, creation, achievement, purification, modification, all of it can be achieved as a result of karma. But moksha does not fall in a category such as this. Therefore, it is not a karma phala. So karma phala must necessarily have one of the four characteristics: utpatti, apti, vikriti, samskriti. For karma phala must be one of the four kinds. And moksha not being one of these, it cannot be created because it is ever there. It cannot be reached because it is ever achieved. It cannot be modified because it is free from modification. It cannot be purified because it is ever pure. And therefore, moksha, which is nothing but abidance on my own self, that is not, cannot be karma phala. So moksha is something quite different from karma phala. Karma phala vilakshanatvat. What is the illustration? Atmavat. Like Atma is karma phala vilakshana. Because Atma is nitya siddha. Already achieved, still there is scope of karma. Suppose body is suffering from a disease, there is scope of karma because some modification is possible. Suppose body has become dirty, there is scope of karma. You can purify it, you can clean it. So already achieved is not the necessary criterion. When it is already achieved, only apyatvam is not there. When it is already existent, utpatti is not there. But still there can be a scope of vikriti, meaning you may want to improve things. Or samskriti, you may want to purify it. Atma does not fall in any of these categories. Ever pure, is partless, ever achieved, ever complete, ever existent, and therefore it does not fall in the category of karma phala. Atma, like Atma, is quite different from karma phala, so also is moksha, which is nothing but abidance in Atma anyway. What an illustration. Where will you get illustration? This is all false. This cannot be called drashtanta really, because moksha cannot have drashtanta. Atma itself is moksha, that is they will say. Brahma itself is moksha. So Brahma jnanam. So moksha really means Brahma, which is already achieved, which also means Atma. But anyway, for them moksha is something, whatever it is, therefore Atmavat. Because Atma is an illustration accepted by both the parties, and therefore they also accept that with reference to Atma, although also they may not accept it. Those people who accept Atma as Karta, Bhokta, Sukhi, Dukhi, they see the need to do things in Atma also to become Mukta. But idea is that moksha is karma phala vilakshana. It is not a karma phala. It is quite different from a karma phala. This is the idea. Ukta hetu jnanaya karma tat phale prapanchayadi karma phala vilakshanatva. That's the hetu. And hetu jnanaya, in order to understand that hetu, as to how moksha is quite distinct from karma phala, it is necessary for you first of all for us to know what is karma phala, and then to understand how moksha is distinct from karma phala. So in karma phala also, what is karma, that we should know, and what's the nature of karma phala, that we should know, and then we should see how moksha is distinct from karma phala. This is how Bhashyakara proceeds. Karma tat phale prapanchayadi. Bhashyakara now elaborates or explains in detail what is karma, and also what is karma phala. What is the nature of action and what's the nature of a result of action is elaborately now elaborated by Bhashyakara, Shariram Ityadina, which Bhashya we saw yesterday. So in short, the discussion is going to proceed like this. What is karma? It is dharma and adharma. What is karma phala? Sukha and dukkha. And so Bhashyakara will show how karma or dharma can be of different nature. There is what we call taratamya, or there is always a degree or a gradation in the karma that you perform. A karma may be pure, not so pure, dharma also. Just because you do a certain action doesn't mean that it can be called dharma. Or in dharma also, in shubha karma or good action also, there can be gradation. Whether you give 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 100 rupees, So whether Shriyadayam, Hriyadayam, Bhiyadayam, charity is dharma, all right, but how you are doing charity? So that will decide the gradation of karma also. That will decide the gradation of the punya that you get. That will decide the gradation of the sukha that you get. So from the observation of life you can see that there are so many gradations in sukha dukkha because people are experiencing happiness and happiness in different gradations. Therefore we feel that we can see that the punya and the papa that they have acquired also is of different gradation. That means that the dharma and adharma they have performed also is of different gradation. Therefore the people performing dharma, adharma are also of different gradation. Thus we can see different gradation of tartamya in the people, in the actions that they perform, in the result that they achieve, and the result that they experience. Thus we will find this is karma phala and karma. In moksha there cannot be gradation. It's not that one experiences moksha of one kind, other will experience moksha of the other kind. There cannot be gradation in moksha. There cannot be taratamya in moksha. There cannot be taratamya in adhikari also. Adhikari can be Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, cannot be sadhana, chatushtaya, sampanna, the only adhikari is there. And also there cannot be gradation in knowledge. So in case of karma, there are gradations or taratamya everywhere. In the person who performs karma also there are taratamya as to how he performs the action, because he has a choice. Secondly, in the dharma or the karma also there are gradations, in as much as one may perform karma of a great quality, somebody may perform not. In the result also therefore there is taratamya. Depending on the kind of action you perform, the intensity of punya papa also will vary. In experience also there is taratamya. The sukha and the dukkha that you experience also, there are gradations. So there are gradations at every stage in karma. There are no gradations in moksha. In adhikari also there are no gradations because adhikari must necessarily be sadhana chatushtaya sampanna. In Brahma jnanam there are no gradations because jnanam must be true to the object, namely Brahma. In moksha also there are no gradations because moksha is abidance in the nature of the self, which is one without a second. And therefore this moksha is quite distinct from karma phala in as much as it is totally free from gradations at every stage. And this distinction between moksha and karma phala is going to be shown by Bhashyakara differently. That utpatti, apti, vikriti, samskruti, that kind of a distinction could have been shown. But here the distinction is shown by reference to the gradations obtaining in karma and the gradations being absent in moksha. This is primarily the idea that is conveyed by Bhashyakara to show how in the moksha is quite distinct from karma phala. So now page 145, Bhashya says here, Shariram vachikam manasancha karma Shruti smriti siddham dharmakhyam yad vishaya jignasa athato dharma jignasa iti sutrita. Bhashyakara here refers to the very first sutra of the Purvamimamsa, Athato Dharma Jignasa. Ratnavakara explains, Atha means thereafter. Ataha, since, therefore, Dharma Jignasa, an inquiry into Dharma. Atha shows Anantaryam, that something has happened, then alone Dharma Jignasa is possible. So what condition must necessarily have happened? When Atha shows Anantaryam, shows something must have necessarily, as a rule, something must have happened. Then alone Dharma Jignasa is possible. Just as a rule, what should have happened when Brahma Jignasa is possible? That there will be a desire to know Brahman when? When something must have necessarily happened. Sadhana, chatushtaya, sampatti. That when one has acquired that kind of a state of mind, then alone there will be a desire to know Brahman, otherwise there will not be. Similarly also, or that there is a qualification to know Brahman also. We would say that even desire for Brahman, knowledge of Brahman will not be there unless the qualification is. Therefore, Brahmana vividishandi, vedutam icchanti, Brahmanas desire to know. Even to create that desire is the purpose of life. Yajnena danena tapasa. That's the reason why Lord Krishna yajna danas tapasyaiva pavanani manishinam. Yajna, dana and tapa pavanani manishinam. Etanyapitu karmani sangam tyaktva phalani cha kartavyani iti me partha nischitam matamuttamam. Yajna dana tapa, one must necessarily do. Sangam tyaktva phalam chaiva, giving up sangha asakti as well as giving up the karma phala. Because pavanani manishinam, they are those which purify the heart, purify the antahkaranam. And only when antahkaranam is purified, that some vishesha arises there. Because of pura punya or because of this antahakarana shuddhi, some vishesha, something arises by which there occurs a desire to know Brahman. It's a very rare thing. And so, Ishvaranugrahadeva pumsam advaita vasana. That even desire and love for knowledge should arise, that itself shows a great grace of God. So one should have acquired that grace of Lord by way of good karma, Shubha karma. But then Shubha karma is not important there again. What is important is that there must be the desire for the knowledge. So Asa in case of Brahma Jignasa meant that there must be Jignasa, number one. Ataha, since Jignasa takes place, when Antahakana Shuddhi has taken place, therefore Brahma Vichara Kartavya. Therefore Brahma Vichara must be done. Similarly here also, since something happens, Ataha, so Asa Vedadhyanantaram, after having studied the Veda, Adhyana means Patha, Adhyana means Ucharanam. So Guru Ucharanam Anu Ucharanam. Guru utters, he recites the Veda, and the disciple recites in accordance with the recital of the teacher. This is called Adhyanam. But then that Adhyanam is not enough. Why is it so? Vedasya phalavat arthaparatvat. That Vedas are not merely meant for chanting. That's how Jaimini must have brought a revolution. The Purva Paksha there in the Purva Mimamsa is that what's the need for this Dharma, this Mimamsa? Why should we study the Vedas? Just recite the Vedas. By that itself you get Swarga. So there the whole discussion started by the Purva Pakshi saying that merely the recital of the Vedas will give you Swarga or the heavens, and therefore there is no need to have to know the meaning of the Vedas. And Vedas are alaukika anyway, therefore the meanings are not to be interpreted the way you interpret in local words. And so many ways the Purva Pakshi said there is no need to study the Vedas, meaning to understand the Vedas. All that is needed is to recite the Vedas. Jaimini says, no, don't think that you will get Swarga merely by reciting the Vedas. You cannot. When you recite something without the knowledge of it, it doesn't really bless you that much. Only when you recite even the Vedas. And not only that, but that when you perform the actions, you are doing a lot of reciting. And then when you perform an action and you do not know what you are doing, then also that action does not bless you. That in order for an action to be effective, when you are performing an action, you should know why you are doing or what you are doing. So that way Jaimini must have brought about really some mechanical thing must have been there, or whatever it is, where people must have been, they may not have seen the need even to study the Vedas or understand them. So it is understanding of the Vedas which is the whole idea. Vedasya phalavat arthaparatvat. Look, Vedas do not merely have the value of creating the benefit by reciting, which they do. If you merely recite the Vedas, the scriptures, without an understanding of meaning, they definitely will create an effect. Even Bhagavad Gita or Ramcharitmanas or Narayaniya or anything. That's why in India we recite these things, which is beautiful. And recite without understanding Mahimna Stotra and things. Who can understand these things? And still people recite them. And some effect definitely happens. Because the very recital has, the very words and very sounds, all of them have a very blessing effect, very soothing effect. And thus it does influence the personality, there is no doubt about that. But that is not the only value they have much more value than that. Yes, by recital they will create in you a certain blessing, no doubt about that. But don't think that you should only stop there. Vedasya phalavad arthaparatva. That Vedas are useful. Arthaparatva, there is a prayojanam in the Vedas. Phalavat, that they have usefulness. That the knowledge of the Veda have usefulness in our life. Inasmuch as they become the means for attainment of this end in the life that we are seeking. So Veda Jnanam, knowledge of Veda, becomes the Purushartha Sadhanam. That being the case, it is necessary that one should study Veda. Therefore, Vedasya phalavat arthaparatvat, since the Vedas have the usefulness, therefore, atha Vedadhyananandaram, having studied the Vedas, having recited and memorized the Vedas. So they say it always that you must memorize the thing first before you start analyzing it. So grammar sutras memorize first. Anything first memorize. So Vedas memorize. That's why start early, catch them young. Even when the children are, they don't have any choices as yet, put them into this, let them start reciting and they'll enjoy reciting and they'll memorize in no time. Then create in them a jignasa. Do you know what this means? Do you know what is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma? And then you tell him, this really? Then he wants to know. Then creating him a jignasa. Don't simply thrust the abhyas upon him. But having discovered the beauty of the Vedas merely by recital and seen that there is something, and person will understand in some way anyway. And therefore he gets a glimpse of the glory of this. Therefore there arises a jignasa. You cannot teach someone unless he wants to know. So even that Veda Adhyanam also must have an effect of creating jignasa about the Veda. So since by Adhyanam of the Veda that jignasa or desire to know arises, therefore also an inquiry into the knowledge of Vedas must be done. Into the meaning of the Veda must be done. So, atah Vedasya phalavat arthaparatvat dharma jignasa, meaning dharma nirnayaya karma vakya vichara kartavya, it is sutrartha. Atah yatah, since dharma jignasa arises, or that one should entertain jignasa or desire about the knowledge, even if jignasa does not arise for the sake of knowledge, at least jignasa will arise because this person will see the need to understand because he has to perform action. Inasmuch as before he enters the grihastha ashrama, he must know what he has to do in that ashrama, and therefore knowledge of karma is necessary. And knowledge of karma will necessarily require that you should know the Vedas. That way also there will be dharma jignasa because the person is utilitarian. Either you study because you love for knowledge, or you study because it will get you a job. One of the two. The students go to college for two reasons. Either because that qualification will enable them to get a certain job and therefore prosperity in life, or because of love for knowledge. We hope that the students of that other category, that they go to the university because they love to learn. So ataha should really mean that. Since by recital of the Vedas, that a jignasa to know their meaning arises, that requires certain purity of the heart, then definitely a desire to know what does it mean arises. Therefore, he is the right student for you to teach. Or by study of the Vedas, now that he is now graduating, and therefore he has to make his livelihood, therefore he should perform the different actions. And the Vedas say, do this action and do that action, and therefore there is also a need on his part, iti kartavya, how to do it. Therefore also, he will require to know them. Therefore also dharma jignasa. Some people learn by default, some people learn by desire anyway, but dharma jignasa will be there. So therefore, dharma nirnayaya karma vakya vichara kartavya. That kartavya is also added there. Dharma jignasa kartavya or dharma vichara kartavya. So same style is followed by Bhashyakara in Asato Brahma Jignasa. So dharma nirnayaya, to ascertain the nature of dharma. What is dharma? That vidhi nisheda. What do they mean? Dharma here is vidhi and nisheda. They are the principal statements of Vedas. And how to implement that vidhi nisheda? For that you should know what they mean. And then what the supporting or supplementary statements are. And what to perform an action, what iti kartavya, what is the procedure to do. And that's how adhikari will be required. Prayoga will be required, Vinyoga will be required, all this will be. Vinyoga means, Prayoga means how to do, what is the sequence, etc. Vinyoga is when to do, what to chant when. Adhikara is who should do. All that nirnaya becomes necessary. And therefore, karma vakya vichara kartavya. This is what that first sutra means. Now Bhashyakara introduces. So what is that dharma? That karma is performed at what level? Shariram, Vachikam, Manasancha karma. Karma is performed at three levels: at the body, speech and mind. So in the Vedas, in the Karma Kanda also, all the three kinds of actions are there because there are a number of upasanas there also. As a matter of fact, as a part of performance of rituals also, you are supposed to do japa. So very often you find Brahmana just chanting, not really offering ahuti, because japa is enjoined also. And you also find them meditating for a while in doing sandhya vandana, whatever is required of the devata. On that, avahanam, dhyanam, all of these are also enjoined. And therefore, a typical ritual will involve the physical activity, activity at the level of speech, as well as activity at the level of mind. Shruti Smriti Prasiddham. All of these are Prasiddham, well known from Shruti and Smriti. You will require both of them. You require Veda also and Smriti Grantha also will require, like Kalpa, which tells you the procedures, etc. So Jyotisham will be required, then Vyakaranam will be required to understand all of this. So Dharmakhyam, that is called Karma, which is Dharmakhyam. What is known as Dharma? What is known as virtuous action? What is known as enjoined action? That's all. Dharma means what? Whatever is enjoined by Veda. And what Veda is enjoined must necessarily be for our benefit. Therefore it must be virtuous action. How do you determine whether an action is virtuous or not? Because Vedas have enjoined. How do you know that the action is opposite of it? Because Vedas have prohibited. That's all. You know, you don't have a capability of determining whether an action is virtuous or not because action creates an unseen result and you cannot perceive that. If the result is drashtaphala, then you can yourself decide. That's how all the laukika vyavahara is there, where we can ourselves decide whether an action is right or wrong. That by eating a certain food, something happens to me, then I don't eat. Drashtaphala is there. But you cannot determine that by reciting this mantra. What is the result? How do you decide? Because you cannot perceive. And therefore, when it comes to adrushta, we have to depend upon the Vedas. And so, dharma also means here that enjoyment or virtuous action, dharmakhyam. Yad vishaya jignasa, athado dharma jignasa iti sutrita. Yad vishaya jignasa. So there, dharma jignasa is dharma vishaya jignasa. That is we said dharmasya jignasa, it is vishaya saptami, that's how it was said. Brahmana jignasa, where the sixth, the shashti is not shesha shashti but vishaya. So yad vishaya jignasa sutrita. Then continues further. Sutrastha says Purnanandiya in the last. Sutrastha dharmapadam adharmopalakshanam iti sutra tatparyam sphudi karoti iti bhashyam avatara iti na kevalamiti. So Bhashyakara intends to say that athado dharma jignasa, that word dharma also includes adharma, upalakshanam. Upalakshanam means when a word stands for a whole class of things. So the word dharma here also includes as a class adharma also. Sutrastha dharmapadam adharmopalakshanam. The dharma also stands for adharma. It is sutra tatparyam sphudi karoti bhashyakara. The Bhashyakara wants to bring out the tatparya of the sutrakara, that dharma should also include adharma. Iti bhashyam. That intention of Bhashyakara is avatara iti, is shown by Ratnaprabhakara. Says Ratnaprabha, na kevalam dharmakhyam karma, kintu adharmopi. Not only should you know in your life dharma, or what should be done, adharma also, what should be avoided, that also is very important. So there is vidhi and nisheda. The vishaya of the vidhi is dharma, vishaya of the nisheda is adharma. And therefore both of them should be known. What to do, what is upadayam, what is to be avoided, what is heyam, both of them should be known. Vidhi enjoins us with dharma, which becomes sadhanam sadhanam for sukha prapti. And nisheda prohibits you from doing adharma, which avoids what? Dukkha nivritti. So for avoiding dukkha, there is avoidance of adharma. For attainment of sukha, there is performance of dharma. Therefore both are the desires. Not only that I want sukha, but I also want to avoid dukkha. And therefore, I should know what I should not do. Therefore, na kevalam dharmakhyam karma, kintu adharmopi jignasya. That adharma also should be inquired into. Therefore, Bhashyakara adharmopi iti. So Bhashyakara says, adharmopi हिंसादिहि प्रतिषेध चोदना लक्षणत्वात् जिज्ञास्य परिहाराय अधर्मो भी जिज्ञास्य है. One should seek to know what adharma is. What is adharma? Himsadihi, like injury, meaning like violence, himsa. So violence, etc. is adharma. That also we should know. So himsam na kuryat. Don't do this. I may be a very virtuous person, but then inadvertently I may be doing violence also. Some people are very good, very virtuous, very charitable, etc. But then they may be angry, they may be hurting other people, not thinking that it is wrong, you know. So sometimes we are doing things not knowing what is wrong. You should better know what is wrong also, so that you can avoid it. Himsadihi, therefore, this violence, etc., which falls in the category of adharma, jignasya, that also should be inquired. Why? Why should we inquire adharma? There is a linga in the Veda itself. Why? Pratisheda chodana lakshanatvat. But that is also chodana lakshana. Just as dharma is something that is enjoined, adharma is something that is prohibited. There also chodana, meaning a pravartakam vakyam is there. So chodana is what? Pravartakam vakyam. Any vakya or any statement that impels you to perform something, impels you to do something, is called chodana. And since then when it is said, na himsya sarva bhutani, may you not hurt any living being, then it impels me to do something what? That my natural tendency to hurt has to be contained or has to be restrained, and therefore that also calls for a certain activity. So adharma also calls for an activity in terms of restrainment of those lower natural or base instincts. Therefore it is necessary to know what I should restrain. So pratisheda chodana lakshanatvat, since adharma also is chodana lakshana, therefore that also jignasya, that also one should know. Because Vedas want you to refrain from something also. निषेध वाक्य प्रमाणकत्वा. So what is dharma? That is chodana lakshana, artha dharma. If the characteristic of dharma is chodana lakshana, that which is known by lakshana means lakshyate anena. So that which is known by chodana or pravartaka vakyam, all those vakyas of the Vedas which impel you into activity, if those vakyas are dharma, and arthavan it is, meaning that which brings about a good in your life, then adharma also should be called dharma in that sense, because that prohibition, meaning not adharma, but then that nisheda vakya also is called dharma. You understand? Because nisheda vakya also is meaningful in as much as it enables you to avoid dukkha, also it is chodana lakshana, therefore nisheda vakya also falls in the category of dharma, and therefore that also should be inquired into. परिहाराय धर्मोपि जिज्ञासा इत्यत्र भाष्योक्त हेतु व्याख्यादि निषेध वाक्य प्रमाणकत्वात्. That परिहाराय, parihara means to avoid, as Bhashyakara said, that one should know what is to be avoided in life also. Now go to page 146 and Purnanandi explains, well, some of the expressions of Bhashya which Ratnaprabha does not explain because according to him they are clear. Says Bhashya yad vishaya jignasa iti, yad means yad dharma dharma vishaya jignasa. So jignasa which has its vishaya in dharma and adharma. Athato dharma jignasa adharma jignasa cha iti. Therefore they say athato dharma jignasa, you see a lopa of an other, lopa shakalyasya. So there is a lopa there. That there is a lopa of athato adharma jignasa. And therefore when follows is A and O, and then there is the lopa of that is and therefore you have to see there athato adharma jignasa. That is how you can interpret that vakya to include adharma also. Or better as this, people say dharma is an upalakshanam for adharma, and that's why dharma jignasa also includes adharma jignasa. So athato dharma jignasa adharma jignasa cha iti yad vishaya jignasa sutrida tayoho dharma adharmayoho phalam sukha dukhe sthavaranteshu prasiddhi ityartha. So, yad vishaya jignasa, so asado dharma jignasa, adharma jignasa cha, that's how the sutra should mean. Iti yad vishaya jignasa sutrita, so that jignasa has been enjoined, I mean jignasa has been presented there, and the vishaya of the jignasa is what? Tayoho dharma dharmayoho phalam, the result of the dharma and dharma is sukha dukkhe. The result of dharma is sukha, result of adharma is dukkha, sthavaranteshu prasiddhi ityartha. So that explains the next vakya of the Bhashyakara. So the page 146 Bhashya says, Tayoho chodana lakshanayoho अर्थानर्थयोः धर्माधर्मयोः फले प्रत्यक्षे सुखदुःखे शरीरवाङ्मनोभिरेवोपभुज्यमाने विषयेन्द्रियसंयोगजन्ये ब्रह्मादिषु स्थावरान्तेषु प्रसिद्धे तयोः चोदनालक्षणयोः अर्थानर्थयोः धर्माधर्मयोः फले प्रत्यक्षे. The phala or the result of this dharma and adharma is pratyaksha, meaning it is something evident. Chodana lakshanayoho arthanarthayoho. So chodana lakshanayoho means that which is known by this chodana, meaning this pravartakam vakyam. So an artha and anartha. Dharma brings about artha, adharma brings about anartha. So arthanarthayoho, dharma adharmayoho, of the dharma and the adharma, phale, the result of this dharma and adharma, pratyakshe. Pratyaksha means evident. In what way? Sukha dukkhe. Even though you do not know, when you perform an action, you do not know what the result is, in that sense dharma is not paurusha vishaya, understand? However, from the effect you can infer. When a person is experiencing happiness for no reason at all, or for any apparent reason, you know that some good action must be there on his account that he is experiencing happiness. Or when a person is experiencing pain, then you know that this must be the result of adharma. So this also a simple rule should be known in our life. Happiness comes not from money or not from any external reason at all. Happiness merely the result of dharma, that's all. If you want to be happy and you are justified in having that desire, do good, that's all. Otherwise, if you compromise the very dharma to become happy, that is like cutting your own branch on which you are sitting. So people don't understand this. People do not understand. They think that happiness comes because they have a lot of money and stuff like that. That is not so. Happiness is direct result of what? Dharma, of Shubha Karma. And unhappiness is a direct result of adharma. That's all. So if you want to be unhappy, surely go ahead and compromise dharma. You can be sure of inviting unhappiness regardless of what else you have. And if you want to be happy, go ahead and perform dharma. You can be sure to be happy, even if you don't have anything else. If this simple thing is understood by people in India, which is our fundamental principle, there will be no need for any corruption at all. Because you know that happiness is not in money. Even if you don't study Vedanta, you don't have to study the analysis, when I become happy, what makes me happy and stuff like that. That also you need not. Shastra very clearly says, dharma alone is sukha sadhanam, adharma is dukkha sadhanam. Very clear. So if you want to be happy, dharma meaning virtuous action. Yajna, dana, tapaha. And whatever. So this is called dharma. Do that, you'll be happy. And avoid that, you will be unhappy, there is no doubt. And you don't even know. Swamiji, I am very happy. How do you know that a given thing that happened in your life is not the result of what you did in the past, etc. And therefore, anyway, or you do not know that what you are doing will result in what manner. But the point is, so arthanarthayoho, dharma dharmayoho phale pratyakshe. The result of these are pratyaksha in that sense, evident to us. That when we see a person being happy, we know that dharma must be the cause. When we see a person unhappy, we know adharma must be the cause. Sukha dukkhe. Shariravaṅ manobhyeva upabhujyamane. And their experience at all the three levels. Shariravaṅ manobhi, at the level of body, at the level of speech, at the level of mind, upabhujyamane. I don't know how to experience the level of speech, but then somebody's speech can give you the result. That's how it can happen. You can experience the result of dharma at the level of your body by way of comfort, etc. Or indriya. Body means indriya here. Indriya janya sukha is there, so you know that dharma is there. Or whenever you have this indriya bhoga, understand that you are utilizing your dharma, So whenever you indulge into sense objects and think that you are getting happiness, understand that whatever stock of punya karma you have is being exhausted away. So don't do that, Keep it in reserve. Anyway, so Vishayendriya Sanyoga Janye. Wherever there is a sanyoga of Vishaya and the Indriya, there is an experience which is Sukha and Dukkha. Which experience can be at the level of body, meaning sense organs, which experience can be at the level of words also. Somebody can tell you nice words, or somebody can do other way also and create happiness and unhappiness. And of course mind, how your mind is, whether mind is cheerful or not cheerful. And so, all this Vishayendriya Sanyoga Janye, Brahmadishu Sthavarandeshu Prasiddhe. This is the case with everybody. All well known that people experience happiness and unhappiness at the level of body, speech and mind, and definitely for the Vaidikas anyway, Prasiddha for them. Prasiddha means what? It is well known and accepted by everyone that happiness comes because of dharma, unhappiness comes because of adharma. Not so right now. But today people don't accept this. How do you say that? People who are so honest and then killing themselves, what do they get? They seem to only get suffering in life. And what proof do we have to them? What proof do we have? Invariably, fellows who are honest are all suffering. And the people who are dishonest and clever and smart, they seem to be getting away with all kinds of things. So how do you say that this dharma brings about sukha and adharma brings about dukkha? Then we have to give different reasonings to them. There is no need to believe that the happiness that is experiencing right now is necessarily the result of the action that is performed now, but that the happiness is experiencing now may be the result of action is performed in the past, and that the action is performing today will definitely bring about the appropriate result, and so forth. Of course, that logic can be provided, and it's true logic also. But it is not evident. In short, the connection between karma and the karma is not evident to us. But then, Brahmadishu Sthavarandeshu Prasiddhe, what is it? And then, Shruti and the Smruti, what is it? Shruti Smruti Prasiddham, all of this Prasiddham is for the Vaidikas. For the people who accept the Pramanya of Shruti and Smruti, it is Prasiddham. For Charvakas, it was not Prasiddham even then, understand? But we are talking to Vaidikas anyway, because the Purva Pakshis are all Vaidikas. If you are addressing Charvakas, then we will have to say it differently. But since the Purva Pakshi himself is a Vedika, therefore we say Prasiddhe. Because this is accepted by both the parties, therefore we need not contend on that. If that fellow does not accept, we will have to present it in a different way. So when Charvakas are addressed, this will not be the language. This is how Prasiddhe. I mean, this is accepted by everybody, everyone knows. Isn't it? He says, yes, we know that. Because the Purva Pakshi also, he has Shraddha in the Vedas. He also accepts Vedas as Pramanam. Question is what the Vedas say is the Pramanam. That Veda is Pramanam is no problem. And so, Sukha Dukkhe Shriravangmano bhi eva upabhujyamane, and that the happy pleasure and pain and experience only by the means that are available to us, body, mind and speech, Vishayendriya Sanyogajanye, that they always occur as a result of sanyoga or association of the object and the sense organs. Brahmadishu Sthavarandeshu Prasiddhe. We know everybody experiencing happiness and unhappiness, even Brahmaji also. In the Shruti Smruti Prasiddhi is there. The Brahmaji also, Indra, all of them feel jealous. Dukkha is there also. Not that Indra is always happy. It is the Pauranikas have made it a point to make sure that Indra is presented as unhappy, for whatever reason. Indra has always been a target of all these people. That he is jealous. He is, when they describe Indra, Indra is described as God always. Even in Ramayana, Mahabharata, wherever Indra and these Devatas are described, they are described with a great high esteem. But when Puranas describe Indra, they always describe as some fellow who has no business other than to be jealous of others and to pull down somebody else and a manipulator and things like that. So we imagine that the same Indra that they are talking about. And therefore, Indra also has unhappiness there and Indra also has happiness, we imagine. Because in his Sabha, all kinds of apsaras and all these things are there. So Vishayendriya Sanyoga Janya Sukham is there. And then in the mind he also suffers. So all kinds of stories are there. How Indra also insults his guru, and how he also is cursed, and how he also is born as a, as what do you call it, as a Varaha. And all kinds of things are there. So Indra has gone through all this. Because how many Indras are there? Every Manvantara, Indra also changes. And therefore, if you find different stories of Indras, understand they are all in different Manvantaras and different Kalpas and everything else. But anyway, all of this is known that even in the heavens also, there is a difficulty. It's not that everything is good there. So somebody said, Swamiji, there is problem in the heavens, This is an expression in English. So, there is quarrel in the heavens. So what's that? Two persons are quarreling. So they were getting along so well right now, so far, now there is a quarrel there. That's all they mean. And this is how. So we find that there is quarrel in the heavens also. So Sukha Dukkha, all of these are in all the lokas. Says Ratnaprabha, Mokshastu Atindriya, Vishokaha, Shariradi Abhogya, Vishayadi Ajanya, Anatmavetsu Aprasiddhayati, Vailakshanya Jnanaya, Pratyakshatvadini Visheshanani. Why this Dharma Janyam Sukha Dukkha has been presented in this way? Bhashyakara has used many Vishesh adjectives to describe that Sukha. To show the Vailakshanyam. Here the whole treatment is to Vailakshanya between Karmaphala and Moksha. So, Karmaphala is, Moksha is Atindriya. Here Bhashyakara says, Sukha Dukkhe Pratyakshe. We see the person experiencing pleasure and pain, something evident. Moksha is what? Atindriya. And therefore, you cannot decide whether a person is mukta or not based on his external behavior. That's the whole point that Vedanta will make every day. That you cannot decide whether a person is mukta, sarvatha vartamanapi nasabhuyo vijayate. So whatever he does, he is mukta. Therefore from the behavioral pattern you cannot determine whether a person is mukta or not. So we always give them benefit anyway. That's always for our own safety, for our own welfare. If you give benefit to everybody, they are all muktas and mahatma. That's fine. But nobody knows, you see. And so even Lord Krishna also doesn't give any external characteristics. So, Atmaniyeva Atmana Tushta, how do we know? And so, who is Muktaha? Atmaniyeva Atmana Tushta. He is happy by himself, with himself, totally content. One can make a show also. After all, you can show your faces smiling and stuff like that also, and therefore there is no way that you can necessarily determine Atindriya. So, Moksha, Sukha Dukkha are evident, but then Moksha is Atindriya. In that sense also you can say, I guess, whatever. If Atindriya, then Jivan Mukti does not come. So actually, the characteristics of Jivan Mukta are also described. In that sense, perhaps, you can see whether a person is Mukta or not. But then, still, inasmuch as there is no connection between Adhyaropa and Adhisthana, all the so-called behavior at the level of Adhyaropa, according to Veda of Vedantins, and Moksha is the nature of knowledge of Adhisthana, therefore, there can be no relationship between them. Therefore, you cannot have any logical link between Adhyaropa and Adhisthana. That we said, Atindriya. Vishokaha. There can be shoka. Dukkha can be there as a result of karma phala. In moksha or Brahma Vidya phalam, there is no shoka at all. Shariradi abhogya. Moksha or Atma is not something that is experienced. You can't experience it by the sense level, or at the level of words, or at the level of mind. It is not an object of experience because it is your very self. And therefore, Shariradi abhogya. While this is what? Vishendriya sanyogajanye sukha dukkhe. And moksha is what? Shariradi abhogya. Cannot be experienced by body, meaning cannot be experienced by the sense organs or the mind. Vishayadi ajanya. At least for sukha, there is a nimitta. You feel happy when you get something that is desirable. You feel unhappy when you come across something that is undesirable. So usually, this happiness and unhappiness are seen to be the result of association with desirable and undesirable, ishta and anishta. Moksha is not like that. It is not nimittaka. It doesn't have any nimitta at all. Because whether dukkheshu anudvignamanaha, sukheshu vigataspruhaha. And therefore, moksha is independent of any external situation, independent of the situation of body, mind, and speech. It's totally independent. Whereas the karma phala is dependent upon all of these factors. Then this is pratyaksha means prasiddhe. Sthavaranteshu prasiddhe. Everyone knows the result of happiness, dharma and adharma. However, moksha is aprasiddha, unknown. Anatma vitsva prasiddha. People who are knowledgeable, people who are wise with reference to Atma, they know. But then others do not know what Atma Jnanam is, what moksha is. Idi Vailakshanya Jnanaya. So right in the first statement itself, Bhashyakara shows the Vailakshanyam between karma and Brahma Vidya Phalam. How karma phalam is of one kind and Brahma Vidya Phalam moksha is altogether distinct. This distinction or the total difference between them is shown here. Then Ratna Prabha continues, Samanyena karma phalam uktva dharma phalam prasak prapanchayati. So this is distinction is said. But to elaborate upon the distinction further. So generally speaking, the distinction is said about karma phala. Now to elaborate. Then Bhashyakara will now elaborate the distinction between dharma phala and moksha and adharma phala and moksha. Both the distinctions will be now stated. Samanyena karma phalam uktva. Having said in general what is the nature of karma phala, dharma phalam prasak prapanchayati. Separately. Okay, here also there are some. Ratna Purnanandiya gives explanation of this. Vishendriya Sanyogajana Sukasyapi Anityatva Shokatvamev Aho. So here he says, how do you always find shoka in your life? Even when a person is happy, how can you say that he is unhappy? He says he's still unhappy, So how? Vishendriya, there must be added a word Sanyoga Janya Sukasyapi. The happiness that is born as a result of the contact, the sense organs and the sense object. Anityatva. Saying that's why Lord Krishna said, Yehi samsparshaja bhogaha dukkhayo na evate adyanavantah kaunteya nate shuramate buddha. So all the bhogas or experiences that are born as a result of contact the sense object and the sense organ are dukkhayo must be understood as the cause of dukkha alone. Keeping that in mind, it is said that adyantavantaha, because that sukha is only momentary, and when it comes also, then also it is mixed with dukkha, and also when it comes, it always incredible.